Recording with Dr. Ryan Cole of Viking ancestry, who just told me a great philosophical line, and it's there's no such thing as bad weather, there's just bad clothing, and that is how right you are, sir. Dr. Cole, please introduce yourself for all my audience, and I guess for me.
Yeah, sure, you bet. Dr. Ryan Cole, I'm a board certified anatomic and clinical pathologist. Run an independent laboratory here in Idaho, where I've been for about 20 years. Trained at Mayo Clinic. Was there back in the late 90s, early 2000s for 5 years. Did anatomic pathology, clinical pathology, surgical pathology, was chief fellow there. Then went on to Columbia in New York and did a year of dermatopathology. In med school, I was an MD PhD student, also did immunology, virology PhD work. And for about a year, and then we had our first daughter on the way. I have six daughters. And so at that point, I decided I didn't need to be a doctor, just being a doctor was enough. And so, I pathologists, for people who don't understand pathology, I basically like to say the pathologist is the most important doctor that you never meet, that you always hope is right. So, you go, you get blood work, you get a biopsy, you have a surgery, and in that black box of the laboratory, there's medical professionals, technicians, scientists, PhDs, et cetera. And then there's the pathologist. And so we're kind of the quality control of medicine. We're the ones that look at the patterns, look at the cells, look at the blood patterns, et cetera. And so I'm the doctor to the doctor. And so that's kind of my day job. And as I mentioned, life beyond that, I'm a father of six daughters that I call my blonde entourage. So, most of them are grown and gone. I've got four in college right now and one left at home. And then beyond medicine, I live on an organic farm, 21 acres. And so we like to feed through a CSA. We have 50 families that subscribe to our farm. I raise cattle and sheep. And next weekend, I'll be out pruning about 250 fruit trees that I planted 15 years ago. And when I'm not doing that, I'm building wooden boats and tables or sawmilling. I have a couple sawmills on my farm, so I don't go to the gym as often. I like to joke that I don't do CrossFit. I do crop fit, hardcore fitness based on 19th century farming practices. I do work out too, but I lift plenty of hay bales and feed bags and just try to find balance in life beyond the life and death of daily medicine.
You're like the ideal of what man should be.
I try, I try, Tommy.
Like father on a farm, doctor, woodworking, like you are the ideal that like I need to strive for. That
Uh,
is
you know,
impressive.
I appreciate that. I just tell people I just know how to be myself and hopefully, inspire friends and others to do whatever they can do that, brings yourself joy. And so, people are like, oh gosh, man, how do you do all that? I'm like, I don't know, I just do it. It's just how I live life and I enjoy in the journey and doing all of it.
Now, do you pray and or meditate or
I
anything?
meditate. Yeah, I grew up in a very conservative religious structure that I left about 15 years ago. But I try to maintain a spiritual connection to all things life and humanity. And, if there's something greater than us, I don't name it, but I connect to it. So I do try to meditate daily and just, center the mind, center the focus. So that's absolutely something that is critical in my daily practice.
If I can sound like a total like snooty, just painfully disgusting person, I've been meditating since every day since 2008, and there is something odd that I can't put a scientific name to it, but there is something where whenever I'm talking to someone and interviewing them, and you can just tell, and you go, "Do you meditate?" And they're like, "Yeah." I don't know what it is, and I know that sounds really like snobby, and I don't mean for it to be like that, but there is something that I can't name. I'm sure there is like a scientific explanation for it that we probably just haven't discovered yet. I don't know. There's some weird
Yeah,
thing you're emitting, but
probably goes into that mirror neuron concept.
what's
Uh,
that?
Mirror neurons, where you can see it a lot, kind of in the sixth sense in the animal kingdom, where one animal can sense what another animal is doing, or like schools of fish, or even like a murmuration of starlings flying. It's just that other sense where even though your neurons are trapped in your cranium. Just having, I think there's just a greater connection that we do have at times that, like you said, it's hard to put a name on it, but there's so many fascinating studies that just show, someone's doing this or thinking this, and someone else in a nearby or even a distant location can have that same experience and or connect in odd ways. So beyond just the pathology, I love studying so many other areas of life and medicine. And my drug of choice is knowledge. And so just always learning in all areas, and then synthesizing and cross-pollinating ideas, and just trying to just learn how it all interconnects. Do I have all the answers? You bet I don't. But is it fun learning? Yeah, absolutely.
I've interviewed Howard Bloom several times. He's a cool guy. He got really into science after he was bedridden for like 15 years. But before that, he was Michael Jackson's publicist, like worked
Oh,
with
wow.
Prince. It's wild. And it's like 83, I think, and he just works nonstop. But he has his own like field, omnology, and it's just the connection of all things.
Hmm.
And I get that. I listen to an audiobook. I mean, every day I listen for at least an hour at 2x speed, and I always think of General Mattis had a quote that was he said, if you have not read hundreds of historical books, you are functionally illiterate.
Hmm.
And his other one is intuition is pattern recognition, nothing more, nothing less.
Hmm.
And I always think about how, like, whenever you fill out like a CAPTCHA on, are you a human, and it's identify the street light, and the picture's always a little angled and a little blurry, and that's actually used to feed AI. It's to prove that you're a human, but it's also on the back end, that's also over the hundreds of billions of those, that's used to feed AI. And
Hmm.
the more times AI can look at something, can get better and better at recognizing things. And I always think of just my own brain as like that. And I try to synthesize, like, suck in as much as I can, just vacuum it up, just go full NSA, just throw it all in the hard drive. And then if I've read hundreds of them, I'm functional, and that would increase my bank of pattern recognition, and thus, in theory, would improve my intuition. Now,
Absolutely.
I don't have any way to prove that yet, but that's kind of
No,
my running
that's kind
theory.
of kind of what I do on a daily basis, in terms of pathology is, I sit here and I look at microscope slides. So every time I'm looking at tens of thousands of cells on any one slide, and I've seen diagnostically about 500,000 patients through the microscope in my career. And but it's all pattern recognition. You're absolutely right. And you can look at a tissue biopsy or section and go, okay, intuitively, you're looking for certain cells, but overall, sometimes you just get that gut feeling because of all that image capture over all the years that's stuck in the neurons. And when they fire, you're like, okay, be careful on this one. You've seen this before, but what's different? And so that's how I roll. Along the lines of what you're talking about, one of my favorite quotes is Mark Twain, and that's the man who does not read has no advantage over the man who cannot read. And so much of our society and so many different professions are just they're stuck in groupthink or just stuck in linear thinking, and there's so much to read and learn that it's kind of, I think, intellectually frustrating to look at colleagues that are stuck in old patterns. And like in medicine, we joke that the science advances every time a generation passes away.
Well, yeah.
And I think that's kind of true. I mean, we've lived that the last 3 years, watching people get into groupthink and not thinking outside the box. Obviously, there have been some fantastic mentors and heroes who have thought outside the box and done wonderful things. But I'm like you, 2x everything. I'm listening to podcasts and presentations all day long. I've got my Audible, full of books that I wish I had. Like I could listen to them on 3 or 4x sometimes. And
Yeah. I Yesterday was the only time I had on Dr. Peter Bregan, and I had to finish his
uh
book Global Predators, and that's like a personal point of pride for me, is I will never have on an author and not finish their book. It's
yeah,
just, even if I don't retain any of it, it's just like a personal, like, I showed up, like I left it all in the field. Like, I showed up, I did my, you show up in the suit and tie, like, at least just show respect to, even if it's an awful book, just read it through and through. And his book is great, but
it's a dense book. Yeah,
yeah.
took me a couple of airplane flights to get through
Yeah.
that one.
Well, I downloaded it like I always kind of leave myself just to like fear. I'll wait until I have like 4 or 5 days before they guess. Because I used to study all the time. I got into medical school out of college and I decided not to go. But I didn't know like how to study. So I would just study all day, every day. And like a gas fills whatever volume it's in. I would just I have 12 hours today and I only have like three things to study. You're kind of half studying, but in my mind it was total BS. It was like it's like someone that goes to the gym and they're like, well, I'm at the gym. And it's like, you gotta work out, dude. In my mind, I was like, I've got the textbooks open, like I'm doing it. And I had another friend who I studied for the MCAT for 9 months and scored in the 95th percentile. He studied for 3 weeks and was still like drinking every night and scored in the 98th percentile. And I,
Wow.
I was like, what are you? Like who and he goes, leave yourself just enough time to get an A and then wait until you only have that time left. I was like, why? And he was like, you don't need coffee, you don't need Adderall, fear. and uh and so I find myself now where I'm just like, I'll wait till a couple days ahead and I'll just let the fear kick in. I'm like, I have to read this book. I made a critical mistake of assuming that all audiobooks are about 10 hours. And I downloaded this book and I looked on Audible. It says 24 hours. And I just went, oh. And so yesterday and the day before, I maxed out. I've never maxed out Audible. I was at 3.5x. Get it in, get it in. And I finished it like 2 hours before I had him on. I was like, oh my God. And then like, but yeah, no, maxing it out. Like I just have to just suck it all in. I don't really know where I was going with that. I don't think there's a question.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's a great book, and just yeah, just always, like I said, knowledge is my drug of choice, and I wish more people were like you and just consuming information. I'm the same. Just I don't care if it's nature, I don't care if it's science,
Yeah.
politics, whatever it may be. You become a richer, deeper person just by having that breadth of understanding of the world and history too. I love history
Yeah.
and just putting the pieces of history, watching us repeat same mistakes, hopefully learning from history, and then advancing any field of life. And I can't. I mean, it sounds like we're birds of a feather, but I
Yeah.
can't imagine living life any other way.
Yeah. And the wild thing is I only started doing this like 3 years ago, probably like a year before I started my podcast. I was teaching myself graphic design, and I was just like, well, like I have to have something. Like you only listen to the same song so many times. I start listening to audiobooks, and I lived at home with my parent. I lost a brother to suicide in 2014, and
I'm
so
so
I decided not to go to medical school. Thank you. And then to that, I just tanked doing drugs, got really fat, and I moved home to my parents in 2016. They were up in Maryland, so I moved from Georgia. Relationship fell apart, lost most of my really bottom of the barrel. And I was teaching myself graphic design. I just had a kind of a knack for that, and I would play like video games at night. And I always just felt so guilty for playing video games because I'm like 26 years old in my parents' house. And like, by 26, my parents were like both my dad's parents were like dead by the time he was 26. Like he had four boys, like, and I just always felt guilty. So I would always mute the video game and listen to an audiobook. And it was my own way of being like, I'm doing something. I'm fat. I'm unemployed. I'm a loser. I turned down medical school. I lost the girlfriend, but I'm listening to a book about Teddy Roosevelt. And I was like, I'm doing something. And then it kind of just led to, and so what people ask is like, well, how do you listen to so many? It's the opposite of the med school approach, which for me was fear. Although I do still use that for guests, I suck in as much information as possible by putting no rules on what I listen to.
hmm
It's
Yeah,
not, we have to listen to science. It's no, anything.
right.
Grab anything. And the point is, so like, finally started keeping track of how many books are like 2 years ago. I think I started in August 2021, just keeping track. And since then, I have listened to 102 books. And
Awesome.
so just like recently, just in this year, Global Predators by Peter Bregan, Fake Catastrophes by Patrick Moore, co-founder of Greenpeace, War Without Rules by General Robert Spalding about China, Oil by Upton Sinclair, Losing Military Supremacy by Andrei Martyanov, Transcend Fear by Dr. Ladapo, Cause Unknown, Ed Dowd, Killing Kennedy, Jack Roth, The Jungle, Upton Sinclair, The Heart of Being Helpful, UFOs in the National Security State. Like you can go full conspiracy, man. Go into the grays and the flying saucers in Area 51, Spoils of War, Luigi the Zip, The Crowd, Moonwalker, Chip War, Glyphosate, Gorgon Stare, Dreamland, Lies My Government Told Me, Shadow War, Zangazur Campaign, Scorpion's Dance about Nixon, KL about Nicholas Washburn about the concentration camps. When the Towers Fell about the World Trade Center. Brine of War, Genes of the Beast, Body of Secrets, Hell in Good Company, Devil and the Dancer, Shadow Factory about the NSA, Base Nation about our bases around the world. Tomorrow the World about the American Empire from 1945 forward. X-15 rocket plane, a bunch of journals from like the 50s. Donovan, America's Spy Master, about Wild Bill Donovan, who created the OSS and the CIA. Like, just have as much fun. Confessions of the Illuminati. Like, just
Yeah,
go full tinfoil hat, man. And when you do that, it gets so fun that you don't feel like you're reading, but then you start to notice patterns.
of course. Yeah, and the biggest swear word in my home, when we were sitting at the dinner table with the daughters over the years, I said, biggest swear word you can say is bored.
Hmm.
I'm bored. I said, with the amazing amount of knowledge there is to be gained on this planet, all the experience and all the breadth of life, you're not allowed to be bored. You can be tired, you can be, fed up with something, that's fine. But if you're bored, then you're not using the gift of a mind that you've been given. And so yeah, I've tried to model that for the kids. And it's same, similar to you. I mean, I could go through my Audible list and you'd probably laugh, but it's similar. Sampling across the fields of life makes you a more well-rounded person, and then it helps you ask the right questions in life. And similarly, I'll listen to conservative talk radio on a drive to work, and then NPR in the evening because I want to understand what everybody's
Yeah.
thinking. I don't bring a bias to life. I like to third party person myself, fill myself with information, and then that intuitive mind and that pattern recognition is going to bring you to a more logical answer. And so I always assume I know nothing, and then they may be right, they may be right. I don't get into this polarized tribalism per se, but I do listen to, okay, what's the logic at the end of it? I try to be rational in all of it, but I'll go down the conspiracy pathways just to understand what people are thinking and how they get there. It's like, okay, I can see that, and this part of it and this part of it may be true, but at the end of the day, is it the whole truth? Probably not. And so that I think that helps one be a more well-rounded individual and human being. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I've been able to vote in 4 presidential elections. I've voted for 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, each opposite each. Not because I'm trying to like balance myself out, but I keep my mind completely open, and I'm like, stay, plasticity, stay limber.
Absolutely.
And to me, like, I like that. I like that whatever I genuinely believe now, I like that by the next election, I'll probably be like, no, man, you're an idiot. It's this. And then after that, I'll be like, no, 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 no. You're the idiot. And to me, that's growing. Like that's seeing different sides of things, seeing like the brilliance in it, realizing that it's not the other side. They're just people who had different experiences than you. They grew up in a city, you grew up on a farm. They grew up, here, you grew up there, public school, private school. They grew up with guns. You grew up in a city where no one had guns. You grew up hunting, you grew up, whatever. And then with conspiracies, it's fun because it almost kind of feels like a hidden history. But then you also start to realize which ones are just total BS. And you're like, there is a probable conspiracy around Kennedy. He had enemies. And then you're like, the earth is not flat. And you can go in and you can start, and some people take it all and they go, it's all a conspiracy. And that is just as bad as saying none of it's a conspiracy. You're a
Right.
conspiracy. Life is so much more nuanced than that. You have to be able to, I always say, instead of diving down the rabbit hole, you've got to repel very slowly. And
Mm.
you can go, somebody's like, let's swan dive. And you're like, no, that's a cave with a concrete floor, like, or a rock floor. Like, you got to go down slowly. Got to tap it in, put the thing into the wall, make sure it's safe. All right, let's go down a little further. Do they have aliens at Area 51? Let's examine. Oh, don't lose your footing. Don't lose your footing. You're saying that the Greys are in the middle of the earth and they're controlling Hillary Clinton. You're like, that's we're not doing that one. Okay, is there a military advantage? Did Eisenhower think that maybe there are other? Okay, well, Eisenhower's credentialed. I'll take that and I'll put it in the database. And oh, MacArthur thought there might have been craft. Okay. Oh, the Russians wanted us to make us think that there were craft so they could flood our radar system so that they could do an invasion. Oh, so now we have a piece of information that says it might all be bullshit. Okay, and you kind of just weave in between, and yeah, that they're so fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it, there's a quote I use often, and I say the moment you stop learning is the day you die. So
Okay.
some people die at 25 but aren't buried till they're 85.
Love that quote.
So that's kind of this approach that you're describing. It's like, okay, no rules. I want to learn about this. So a couple years ago, 8 years ago, I'm like, I've got a farm. I probably need bees. And then a tree cutter friend of mine, I work with some tree cutters that bring me logs for my sawmills. He said, "Hey, I found a hollow tree. It's got a hive of bees in it. Do you want it?" I said, "Yeah, let me come rescue that hive." So that was my first hive of bees. Then I went through a whole year of just reading books on the amazing life of bees and the interactions of bees, and then going into the colony collapse disorders, and then the neonicotinoid pesticides, et cetera, et cetera. So it just opened up a whole channel of learning and just understanding the corruption in the EPA and corruption in agencies allowing chemicals to be used that kill our pollinators. And it's like, wow, that was, and it wasn't a rabbit hole, but it opened up just the breadth of view to a world that I didn't understand. And now, I naturally, organically keep my bees in my farm and everything, but realize the fields around me may not be pure. So it's just understanding again how all the world interconnects through different things. And even the hive mind of humanity, just drawing those comparisons of hive minds and social structures and just again cross pollination of ideas, to use the bee analogy, but just kind of fun to go down at whatever rabbit hole of curiosity you have, feed it, because your mind's going to expand and grow in some way, shape, or form, and then you are going to eventually recognize a pattern that nobody saw. I kind of like the ideas of Seth Godin, where he talks about everything that ever was, ever is, and ever will be is floating out there in the ethers right now. And if it taps you on the shoulder, it's up to you to either channel it at that moment or it's going to go on to somebody else.
Yeah.
And so it's like not missing that opportunity to learn something new. Or sometimes you see that idea filtering down to you and you just say, okay, now is not the time and season, that's someone else's. But other times when you have all that synthesized knowledge that you're describing, then you say, hey, this one's for me and I'm going to run with it and learn from it and then share it and make the world a better place because I was willing and open at that moment to channel that construct or concept. But if you're not open to learning or not open to curiosity, then it'll never happen. So like you said, just that foundational is probably broader than most people have or most people know. And this classical liberal education people used to get, where you learned Latin, you learned history, and you learned the breadth of things, and then you could build foundationally on that. Now we've got this algorithmic educational system that unfortunately drives people into, I learned this, and this. I rotely got that correct. Now I can move on to the next course, instead of having the synthesis of knowledge and how do you integrate knowledge, how do you apply knowledge. And I find that I think one of the drawbacks of our current society is what a truly educated person is not what the grades or the diploma or their certificates seem to indicate.
Mm. Yeah, in the pattern recognition, uh, like playing video games with friends or something. One of my friends over my shoulder is it's a gaming computer, and so this is the Mac. This is for business, and that one's for play. And I was on it for like about a month playing with friends online. And there are just these, you play for 6 hours on a Friday night, and then there may be 3 hours in, there maybe just be this moment where everybody's like a couple beers deep and you're doing something like we play SWAT team games where you're like raiding a crack house or something. And then it's like you accidentally, someone pops up and you shoot him in the face, but it was your teammate. And it's, why the fuck did you do that? And then it just turns into this like they're getting revenge on you and everyone's just laughing, just choking with laughter. And it will turn to like this 15-20 minute, just like beautiful, just like storm front that appears, like does its thing and dissipates, and you can't plan it and you can't recreate it. But I'd recognized it through the podcast that doesn't happen every episode. Sometimes this thing happens though, where the pieces just start falling in place and it's like an avalanche and like it picks up and you can kind of feed it and it's like this big ball of energy. And then like when it's over, just let it die. Don't try to keep it going. But it's like a moment of magic. And so I started like screen recording it and I started a gaming channel just as like a fun side thing about actually about the time Ukraine got invaded. I think that was like one of the first episodes. And I started uploading those and it's just a fun thing. It's completely bastardized. There's no editing. The audio's terrible. It's all just blips. But just kind of noticing that from the podcast, I've started to build that thing up. And now that is something that I'm going to actually use to start making money on the podcast to like further reinvest in the podcast, get a better computer, get a something I never thought would have made anything is starting to make like a couple, dollars here and there. But it came purely from just like the pattern, like of a conversation you and I are having right now, right? Where immediately it's like, oh, we're very alike. That same energy can exist when you're playing games with friends. And sometimes it doesn't happen for 2 or 3 weeks. And then sometimes there's just like a couple nights in a row. And there are nights where I'll be playing and I'll be like, I'm just gonna not get enough sleep tonight. Like I know that because there's just these little things you can notice where you're like everyone's here. There's just this organic thing going on. I'm like, I have to like capture this.
Yeah.
And it's still running strong. And you're like, it's like I have to stay up and watch the shooting star or something. Like, and this beautiful thing happens and you capture it and then just let it go. But I'm using that to try to like tie that into the podcast now. And I don't know what it holds. I don't know what doors it's opening, but it came from just pattern recognition of like, oh, there's a little magic happen. So something's dancing around. It's shimmering. You're like, you just got to grab it.
Well, and it's allowing. I think part of that is just allowing, and part of that I think comes from, that meditative practice of trying to go into that quiet mind, or just getting into flow. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest roadblocks in life sometimes is how do I get into flow? And the first thing is letting go and just allowing. So when you get in those special moments, like when you're at a concert of some sort, and all of a sudden you just feel that same energy across that crowd of 30,000 people, it's like, whoa. Or you can be in a small recital of 20 people and just some genius musician and everybody at the same time. All of a sudden you feel that flow that's greater than self. But I think allowing is part of it. I think, again, a societal construct, so much of, oh, must should, and I like to say, don't should yourself to death. And and so many people should, oh, I should be doing this, I should. No, what are you doing? Allow your moment, allow what you're doing. And some of the greatest thoughts that come to people or come to mind is when you're not being excessively intentional and just allowing anything. And it's funny, I'll be in conversations with friends and say something witty or profound, and I didn't know it was coming. It just comes, and they're like, wait, what did you just say? And they'll write it down, and you're like, oh, you can quote me on that one, I guess. I don't know. But it's allowing. And I think, coming from kind of our puritanical American background compared to traveling the world over the last year and a half and seeing different cultures and whatnot, some are very rigid, but some are just very open. And I like those more open societies and open to thought, open to allowing, open to, one of my favorite comic strips growing up was Calvin and Hobbes.
I love Calvin and Hobbes.
And one of my favorite games is Calvin Ball, because there's no rules.
There's no rules, and it's yeah.
So that's sometimes that's a fun way to live life. Obviously the responsibilities of the day job or feeding the kids or societal responsibilities. That's fine, but when it comes to I think something I think in society that we're missing, especially over the last couple of years, two things: humor and laughter and play. We've forgotten how to play, and whether it's physically playing or whether it's intellectually playing. I think all work no play makes Jack a dull boy, right?
Yeah.
Well, societally we've lost this sense of humor. We've lost the ability. Oh, you can't say this. This is out of bounds. Can't say this, and this Orwellian warping of language and usurpation of what terms do and don't mean, instead of being playful with it and just saying, look, there's no rules, let's just play. Let's play verbally, let's play scientifically, let's go outside and play. Let's play Calvin ball with life, as long as you're not hurting anybody, from a more libertarian construct. But being playful again helps you see patterns you wouldn't see. It helps you find new hobbies. It helps you find new interests. And anybody that's listening to us, encourage yourself to have, if you're not playing at all, allow yourself 15 minutes tomorrow, 30 minutes the next day, an hour the next day. Whatever it is that takes your mind away from your stressors, that's play. And when you're having fun, then so many other things start to flow into the daily construct of how you view the world and shifting paradigms. And I've encouraged my kids in that regard too. And you leave a legacy one of two ways in life, either as a teacher or as a parent. And so to try to teach friends, you teach a lot of people through the reach of your podcast and open up. I like to say you need to sandpaper their neurons, just irritate it just a bit to get them firing in a way that may be, beyond their confirmation biases, so they can see the world in a different way. And, that's what I do on a daily basis in medical education. But it's far beyond that for me. I mean, I proudly have my tag on the wall, this little X back here. I spoke at Peter Thiel's first Hereticon conference a year and a half ago. So I was one of the first annual heretics as a speaker, and that was kind of fun. And why was I a heretic? Because I was willing to speak against narratives, speak against groupthink, and I think that's so important in life. Don't be afraid to speak your mind in a respectful way. We've lost this ability to dialogue, and part of dialogue is playing with ideas. I love the concept of, okay, no one's right, no one's wrong, but let's have the conversation and brainstorm. And another one that I like to share is never bring an umbrella to a brainstorm. Just let the thoughts flow.
That's a great one. That's a great one.
So it's just fun. It's just fun to have, critical thinkers, people like you, people like, amazing people I've been privileged to meet around the world over the last couple of years, just to realize, as hellish as life has become in certain ways, it's also brought fantastic tribes of people together that never would have met. And that's kind of the silver lining of this last couple of years, is just think of the minds that are now melding in ways that are trying to make the world a better place.
100%. And you know, I think I was all work, no play in college. It was just, if you're not studying, you're doing something wrong. And then when I started kind of tiptoeing into playing, deciding not to go to medical school, and then just kind of going nuts after my brother died, just doing drugs. It turned into, there were some bright moments where I kind of discovered the play of just not just doing drugs, but I mean like graphic design. You're like, oh, this is in science, but this is fun. And those kind of beautiful moments where like the magic would happen, I incorrectly thought that if that magic wasn't happening, then I was doing it wrong. And so when the magic would stop, I'd go, well, I'm done now, which is why I was really in limbo from like 2014 to 2019 when I started this show. I was just in this weird limbo of, I'd kind of start to get my life back on track and then I'd fall down. And then I finally came to peace with, because I had rejected my former self so much. I was like, that college Tommy was so miserable that I can't do anything that that guy did. And that also means working out. That means dieting. That means a rigid schedule. This podcast kind of led to a synthesis of like the two different lives, where it's like I show up every day to a playground, but the playground's at the top of a hill and it's only open certain hours. So I got to get enough sleep the night before so I'm not cranky. The hill is the gym. I got to go to the gym. You have to, reading books. It's almost like the playground gates don't open unless you've listened to your book. And then you get there. And sometimes the play happens and sometimes it doesn't. And then when it's finished, you got to come back down. You got to clean it all up. And there is like a structure and rigid schedule. And there are weeks where you don't really have like a magical episode. And you're kind of like, I'm bored. Sometimes you're not even doing it wrong. You're like, I don't even know who I want. Like, I'm talking to great people. Sometimes it's a good feedback cycle where you're like, I need to mix it up. Sometimes you're like, this kind of sucks. None of them are hitting. It's just weird. And then there are like days and weeks where it's just everything's flowing. The episodes are hitting, they're getting views, and it's just like there's this magic to it. But it can't be all or one. You
Right.
still have to, even after a great episode, your adrenaline's pumping. You're like, that was awesome. I have another one tomorrow. You got to get in bed. You got to hit the gym tomorrow.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I'm not saying play all the time. I wish I could.
Oh,
And
yeah, me
I
too.
always, I always joke that, I still haven't decided what I want to be when I grow up, but I've also decided it's no fun to grow up.
Yeah.
And I had a mentor in New York, and he said, "Look, never retire, only rewire." And so just finding whatever is next and just rewiring the mind, rewiring the life or something. But I appreciate very much what you just said. I went to the Air Force Academy at the beginning of my undergrad education. I was going to be a fighter pilot, aeronautical engineer. Now I fly a microscope. Go figure. Life just takes you in all sorts of different directions. But having that discipline leads you to the ability to do all the other things. But if you don't have, those patterns, that discipline, so I think having a disciplined life leads to more opportunity for play, or more opportunity for creativity, or more opportunity for learning. So, I love that, all life is a balance. And everything eventually goes to homeostasis or flatline, but in the interim, it's going to be up, it's going to be down, it's going to be plateaued. And that's the beauty of life. Most great science occurs in the eureka moments, but it's the eureka moments that come from that consistent discipline. And some of the greatest discoveries are because somebody had the discipline to build the foundation you were talking about earlier. Then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I see something I never saw because I have that foundation and the discipline. But then when you're in that play moment, cross-synthesizing other areas of life in the world, and you think, wait a minute, why has nobody ever connected this and this? I had a great teacher, English teacher, back in eighth grade. And, of course, we did the sentence diagramming and all the grammar. I loved that stuff when I
I
was a
hated that crap so much.
kid. I enjoyed it. But that was the rigid structure, right? But here's what she made us do. She would say, okay, back in the day when we had the card catalog and had to pull the drawer, she's like, okay, I want you to go pull a card from that drawer, close your eyes, pull a card, go to that drawer, pull a card. All right, now sit at your desk, read each card, completely unrelated things. She said, now I want you to write a short story that connects those two things. So you always had to take different disciplines or different constructs and different ideas. And she not forced you, but gave this wonderful playground into saying, there's no rule that this can't be connected to that. And it was such an exercise at a young age into thinking, oh, this can be related to that, can be related to that, and this whole web of life and different things. You may pull a card on, supply and demand theory, and one on anteaters of some strange country, and you have to write a story about the two things together. And I think that was a early entree into finding spaces in the mind that you didn't think were allowed to connect to each other. And it's fun to do things like that. I
It's
still do it to
great.
this
It's great. Um, Sorry, my eyes twitching. Just have like a heart attack during this podcast. We're having a
day.
good conversation, and this is it.
I'll dial 911 for you.
Yeah, and it's just over. But yeah, no, it is that discipline of, again, like this podcast, got to be well rested, can't be foggy. You got to exercise. It clears you out. You're quicker. You're sharper. Got to meditate. Got to shower. Be presentable. And I always, on top of like reading books for authors and for my own enjoyment, I also always keep it as just this, like, I don't know, like this ammunition stockpile. Because early on, when I was starting the podcast, I had no idea what I was doing, and I was just grabbing people. And you can't get anyone on when you're like, "Do my podcast." Like, what is it? I'm like, I have 9 subscribers on YouTube. They're like, "Leave me alone." So you would just have to go on Reddit and just have to do low picking fruit. Someone would be like, "I drive dump trucks," and you're like, "I'll take it. Come on, we're gonna talk about dump trucks," and you just build it up from there. But sometimes you have people that would just, and it doesn't really happen anymore. So this tool is kind of useless. But sometimes you have people that would just clam up. They just
Yeah.
give you yes and no answers. And you can't be like, what are you doing? Because they're doing your show and you have no negotiating power. You have 9 subscribers with an average of 8 views a video. You have no leverage. You have no like you got to show up to my show. You're above your parents' garage in a big echoey room with a crappy laptop. And so when people would clam up, I would just tell myself like I have to get the show to a 1 hour mark and I have to fill the dead air.
Yeah.
So it would just be, the guy would be like, yeah, dump trucks. And I'd be like, what about them? Like, or, bulldozers are like this. And I'd be like, did you know that certain nuclear bunkers actually had bulldozers on standby so that they could come out and remove the waste so that they could get aid to come in from other military commands? And they'd be like, no. And I'd be like, you're going to learn a lesson, right? And I would just start like reciting something I had just read just out of terror to fill the
Oh,
time.
that's great.
And so like I've just have these like blotches of information, people kind of slow down and I'll just be like, did you know we had a plan to nuke the moon in 1969? They'd be like, what? And I'll be like, shut up. We're going to talk about this now. Just kind of bulldoze them into it. And then sometimes you could actually get them to kind of unlock. You apply so much pressure to it and they look at you like, this guy is so unhinged that they let their guard down, and
That's fun.
yeah.
That's fun. Lock picking of the human mind,
Yeah,
and how,
a pressure and heat. You're just like, open up.
yeah, yeah. Well, and some people are hard that way, and some people are just more stoic, and others are just open books, and just finding that way to, relate to people where they, find it, meet people where they are. But man, you got a challenging job, so that I mean that's fascinating that you get to interact with people from all walks and all disciplines. And I can only imagine the mental discipline it takes on your part to try to find, okay, this person is really clammed up. How do I open them? That's fun. Lock picking of the human mind.
Yeah, you just gotta block you have to just sort of you have to completely drop your guard. You have to be
Yeah. Oh
completely
yeah.
vulnerable and just be like, yeah, so when I was fat, unemployed, and living with my parents and on drugs, and people are like, what? And you're like, and
Right.
then you just hit them with that. You're like, when I was waking up and, taking a hit of acid because I was depressed, and people are like, what are you? You like drop your threshold so low that
Hmm.
they're now like, I can't look like an idiot in front of this person. And
There
they'll
you go.
open up. They'll be like, I stubbed my toe yesterday because that's so much less embarrassing than like I gained 70 pounds and looked like Jack Black. Like, so they open up with that. And then sometimes you have someone like I've had on General Spalding twice. He flew B-2 Spirit stealth
Yeah.
bombers. I had him once in 2020 and I had him on again on Sunday. That is just a sphinx. You can't crack him, and all you can do then is you got to go full med school interview. You gotta be like, I read your book and I'm gonna start pulling out facts and figures. So you don't have to smile, you don't have to like me, but you're gonna respect me. You just start citing things from his book, and it's like pull out the crazy organic chemistry mode. And you're like, in chapter 13, when you're talking about like Tao Te songs, and he's kind of looking at you, he's like, this motherfucker, So
Yeah, let's talk about, titanium molding back in the, 1960s and figuring out how they built SR-71.
yeah, they had to get rid of all the wooden bits or the wooden
Yeah.
pieces because they were breaking. The CIA had to set up front companies, and then you just guys kind of start like just flexing the Cold War knowledge. And at the very least, he'll be like, all right, he'll be like, he'll at least look you in the eye, and you're like, sometimes you just got to take a win with that
That's
and
cool.
just slide in there.
Yeah,
Um,
I kind of envy what you get to do. That's cool. I mean, there are days where, I'm kind of transitioning from what I do on the daily. Um, a long story, but because of all the attacks of the pandemic and the false accusations and the insurance companies canceling me for unprofessional behavior of sharing science, now I'm just in consultation mode. And so now I'm kind of delving into some of these other things in life, which is fun, just kind of recreating self and just realizing, the only end in life is the one you choose. There doesn't have to be an end. It's this flowing river of life, and you can't step in the same river twice because it's always flowing, and it's just picking that new step, that new direction, that new flow, and going with it. So yeah, that's really cool what you do, and just, I mean, getting a glimpse into the mind of the breadth of humanity and the breadth of experience. I mean, I'm jealous in a way. I'll admit it, Tommy.
It's it's the most fun. It's the most fun I've ever had. It's also the most humbling thing.
Oh, indeed. You realize how much you don't know how much you don't know until you start talking to people who know so much in other areas. And you're like, oh, I know nothing. Okay, this is so cool.
Yeah. You have on a guy and in your mind, you're like, he presenting himself or something. You're like, oh, this guy's just a dirty commie. He's talking about how bad America is, and he doesn't understand the importance of our military. And then he'll drop like, well, when I was in the first Desert Storm, that's when I start. And you're like, oh, what do I know? I've
Right.
never seen combat, and this guy is. Oh, his ideas are shaped because his buddies were blown up.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I need to sit down. Maybe I
Yeah.
need to shut up. Maybe this isn't some dirty commie. Maybe this is a shock adult who's had real world experiences and is gonna school you.
Oh, and that's a great point you bring up, because I think one of the greatest ways to learn in life is humility.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, and just being able to say, honestly, as much as I know in life, the most honest answer ever is, I don't know. So when someone, and I'm not a BSer. If I know something, I'll share it. If I don't know something, I'll just say, look, I don't know, but I'll find out, because
Yeah.
then that intellectual curiosity kicks in, and it's a matter of, okay, got something new to learn that can be useful and impactful. And it doesn't always have to be impactful, going back to earlier conversation, because it can stimulate pathways that will eventually connect. Okay, learn this, no application, no application, all of a sudden, boom. Now, because I learned all those other things, I can apply it. But that humility that you're pointing out, it's fun. I've been in a lot of other countries in the last couple of months, and trying to speak a little of the languages you're there. I love learning languages, and realizing, I'm like a kindergartner in their culture because I don't understand the language, and the way they phrase things has a far different meaning than our constricted English mind, sometimes English speaking mind. And I'm fluent in Spanish, I know a little Portuguese and Italian, etc. But when you realize, gosh, that's a beautiful romantic language, or you get into the more Germanic languages and you're like, okay, they'll use like 3 words to say something we use in 1 or 2 words. It's like, okay, their mind actually works differently because
Mm.
of how their language centers work differently. And so just that humility of being in a culture and going, okay, I'm going to learn the way they learn because I have something to learn here. And so that humility is so important. And again, I'm a scientist, a nerdy pathologist, whatever, but it goes into so many other realms of life. And yeah, just getting on that journey of the mind.
It's I've gone from like having to force myself to be humble and open your mind to, well, first it's like don't be humble, act like you know everything and make up excuses for why you appeared wrong. And then it's no, you got to start being humble. And it's actually started to lead to this like I enjoy the humility.
Mhm.
It's you have to force yourself to go to the gym versus like, oh, I hate the days when I don't work out. I've come to love the feeling of like, when you're a kid or something, you did something wrong. And it's not like you're a bad person. Your parents sit you down and they're like, I'm sorry for yelling at you, but you did this, that, and the other thing. And you're like, okay. And like they give you a hug and you're like, you've like leveled up. And I love that on the show when I've been just proven completely wrong. And you're also forced to. I look back just 2 years on this episode and I look at some of the things I was saying and I'm like, that's so it's closed-minded. That was so ignorant. I know everything. And I'm like, oh God. But then you go, I'm not deleting it. Leave it up. It's my own humiliation. Put it right there. All right. And that means that in a year, I'll probably look back at this episode and be like, I can't believe I was saying those things to Dr. Cole. I'm such an idiot. Like,
No, no, but I think this is a societal problem we have, where if I did something in the past, am I a perfect human? Absolutely not. Have I made mistakes in life? Absolutely. But to paint people into a lane or a picture because they did something 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years ago and say they're still this person is such an ignorant approach that society has. And how do we improve as a people, as a humanity, as a society? We allow people their past mistakes and just say, I don't care where you were. I'm meeting you where you are. And this has been a challenge I've had over the last couple of years with all the pandemic stuff and the science and whatnot. It's like, look, please disagree with me. If someone disagrees, bring better information, bring better data. And I've done this time and again, just inviting people, look, if you disagree with me, fantastic. I have no ego about this. What this is about, the whole last couple of years, it shouldn't be a political issue. It's not red, blue, or purple. It's a matter of humanity. So what can we learn together to do better by the patient, better by, helping our fellow human beings? So if I'm wrong, teach me. But I've seen that clamming up of society, the lack of dialogue, the lack of interaction and judgment. Well, you said this in the past. I'm like, yeah, I did. Guess what? I learned something. I've grown from it. Now I know this, and that's how all knowledge grows. Is if you're willing to, this. There's a really good book I read by E.O. Wilson a couple of years ago called Consilience, where he was trying to do basically taking the webs of philosophy and science and evolution and just bringing it into one great unified thought or whole. It's a really good read. I really like him as an evolutionary biologist. But getting that idea out of our minds that we don't have the opportunity to do something incorrect. And I like to, Brene Brown talks about shame versus guilt, and shame is I am bad. Guilt is, oh, I did something bad. And so we have, too much of both in society instead of thinking, okay, that was me then. Cool. I evolved because of that. I am where I am today because of all those things that I thought before, but I was open minded enough to grow because of where I was. And I can say, going back to my extremely rigid religious upbringing, am I grateful? You probably heard the analogy before of like, you go on the journey, the ship takes you to the shore. Just because you get to the shore, you don't need the ship anymore. It doesn't mean you weren't grateful for the ship and the ship didn't take you on a great journey, but now you're on the land journey. And now you go up over that mountain on foot. You have to leave the ship behind. And it's not that it was a good thing or a bad thing, it just was. And you just say, okay, I'm grateful for that part. I'm on to the next part of the journey. And too much of society doesn't allow people to do that. Oh, I'm going to paint you into this corner in this box because you said that 10 years ago. I'm like, yeah, because I wasn't as educated about this aspect of life as I am now. So allow me my past mistakes so I can be a better me in the future. And allowing each other that same grace or that same, open-mindedness really would make society function better. And then I can say, look, I'll sit at a table with anyone and talk about anything anytime because I'm not afraid of the ideas or thoughts because
no ego.
no ego. I'm malleable in terms of that plasticity of mind you talk about. That's what makes great discoveries in life happen. That's what makes great leaders happen. That's what makes great societies grow. Is that plasticity, no ego, humility, and forgiveness of past mistakes.
Yeah, there's brilliantly said. It's so much easier when like what I used to view as like someone's going to try to own me politically, like provide a source and be like, see, you're an idiot. Now I'll just, I'll say something and, I'll be, kind of cockily reply like, whatever, man, like give me your source on that. And someone will email me and I'll just respond. I'll say, touche.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing is those same people that were just at war with you on Twitter, you're a fucking idiot. No, you are. And you go touche more times than not, they'll go, oh, you're welcome. You're like, yeah, appreciate it, bud. And
Yep.
it's just like, oh, we're not as vile and as toxic as we all think we. If you just go, I didn't know that. My bad. You're like, oh, no
Yeah.
worries. You
And
just
and
got,
and
and they'll follow you on Twitter. And you're like, are we
yeah.
friends? Like, what just happened? Like,
And it's not, this is where humor is so important because, what you're describing is that ability to just say, oh, touche. And then they have to giggle when that comes through and they're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, wait a
yeah.
minute. got
Yeah,
a sense
flip,
of
flip
humor
him a
about
quarter. You got no, you
it.
won.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I mean the online keyboard stuff, the warriors behind the keyboards that aren't sitting face to face, that's another challenge societally is this we think we're more connected than ever. But what I find, as I sit to a dinner table with people that disagree with me, when you're sitting face to face, it's hard to hate a person, especially when you're breaking bread together. And
Yeah.
when you realize the humanity in each person, and okay, I got different ideas, you have different ideas, cool, but it doesn't take away your humanity or my humanity. And then you find the commonalities, and part of that commonality is more important than those subtle differences that you may have. And so, bringing people to the table together, is so important, so important. This face to face, I mean, when you see a person and you see the humanity in that person, even I don't care if they think differently. I don't care what your stripe of this or that is or isn't. That doesn't matter. We all have our own paradigms and biases from our upbringings or the new journeys we've gone on, et cetera. That's cool, but to disregard humanity is another challenge I think we're facing. Is this demonization of others based on just things that are we probably have 80-90% in common and only 10% difference, and it may shift a degree here and there with certain groups, but I think that shared humanity is really what's far more important, and the humor and the
Yeah.
humor and the humility to use that humor to draw somebody in and say, oh, okay, he's real, she's real, okay, I'll back off.
Humor has a way of, it's like the ultimate disarming Trojan horse. Like,
Absolutely,
like
absolutely.
there's one of the funniest videos I've ever seen. There's this comedian named Ryan Long, and he has this video called "Woke versus Racist," and it's him wearing a shirt that says "racist" or says "I'm a racist," and his buddy's wearing a shirt that says "I'm woke," and they keep finishing each other's sentences, and they're like, "Jinx," the woke guy's like, "I think we should bring back like race-based hiring laws." And the other guy's like, "Me too." And then like he'll be like, "I think there should be a white comedy club," and then like a for colored. He's like, "Been saying it for years." And like and you look at it and it's like you can't, like, people are laughing because it just cuts to it. It's like, oh, that's what this is. Or it's like, Dan Carlin being like, calling out the military industrial complex. He'd be like, we don't bomb white people. When's the last time we bombed white people? Germany. Why? Because they were trying to take over the world. Bullshit. That's our job. Like, so when China was like, that's a weather balloon, in my mind, I was like, you can't do that because that's what we said to the Soviet Union with the U-2. Like, only we're allowed to incur in other people's sovereign airspace. Oh, they
uh,
probably didn't like it either. It's like
right.
humor just, it's the armor piercing bullet. It just goes right through all the layers and it just blows you up. And
Yeah, we're
yeah,
missing that. We're missing that. We need more of that.
it's
Yeah,
um uh there's a point I wanted to make. I forget what it was. I'm gonna go use the restroom real quick and
hey, why don't you do that? Because I've got to as well. I'll go adjust
okay.
my hydrostatic pressure. You go adjust your hydrostatic pressure, and we'll reconvene.
All right, anybody watching that, it's live, so you can go to the bathroom as well.
All right, we'll both be right back. Time out. Perfect timing. Look at
Oh, perfect timing.
that.
Um, there's this idea that I've been playing with, and it's I haven't really fleshed it out enough, but that's kind of the beauty of the podcast. I just fleshed it out on air, kill two birds with one stone. I get to flesh it out and make content. Is like the giant difference that came, I guess, before even writing was just, oral tradition or whatever, even just showing before there's language, just grunting, of generations being able to teach things to the ones after them versus like with apes or whatever we came from, orangutan. Probably should know that. Some proto hominid. Is there some teaching, but in the same way that, you know, like a bird teaches its offspring how to fly or like build the nest. It's like pretty limited. You're doing this, and then they all just do the same thing forever. You know, the birds haven't developed 5G internet yet. They're still very well building their nests, but it kind of caps out. And then there's the idea of passing the knowledge on. Of we invented this thing. This thing's called the hammer. You can break rocks with it. And it took us a generation to learn. But now you guys have it. So the next generation just grows up with we have hammers. They can skip that entire development. They can skip all the R&D for the hammer. We have hammer, hit thing. Someone invents the wheel, which came after several generations of hammers and tools. And now they have the wheel. We can move things with the wheel. Maybe it took 10 generations to go from hammer to wheel. But a wheel's very easy to learn. Oh, round, okay, got it. They now have that tool. And they've now skipped 10 generations. So you're starting with the wheel. On and on and on to I'm born. I don't have to know how a refrigerator works. I just know that perishable food can go in it. Whatever. I don't know how this iMac works. No idea how it's built, fabricated, what ores and minerals. It doesn't matter. Press the button, type in the password. I know how to move I don't know how a trackpad works. No idea how this mouse thingy works. But I know if I put my little appendage on it, I can open the Zoom app and start recording. Cool. I don't know how a microphone works. All right. Doesn't matter. Don't know how a car works. But if I put a key in it and I turn it and I just use a wheel and I could tap my foot, I can now just go around places. I don't know how combustion really works. I think I learned some of it. I don't know how an engine works, but I know I just put the thing in there and it fills up these little tiny things that you can just keep growing off of, right? And it just goes for thousands of generations to where we're using autonomous, spaceships to dock with the International Space Station and it's still just like we are no more smarter than the average person 10,000 years ago in terms of like brain power. We have more and more and more. I I know how like a thumb works, so I can pull up an audiobook and listen to it. Don't you know where it came from? Don't you know how the coding works? I have no idea how the internet works. I have no idea how those bits just appear on my phone. Don't need to. Press play. Okay. And we're just going forward with just that one tiny increment
Hmm.
of passing on what you know. That's just one little thing. And look what it's done over what 10,000 BC first civilization. What we're at 12,023 years. Like, look where we are. Well, I've been thinking, what's the level above that, right? So history repeats itself, or it doesn't repeat itself. History, but it rhymes, right?
Hmm. Yeah, history's a poem that rhymes with
Yeah.
itself.
You have these nations because we still even pass on our own knowledge. Your grandpa will tell you, hey, do what you love, or find a nice woman, or they can tell you things. And so we're a little past just the one line of this is how a wheel works. We have some wisdom. And we can go back and read books and learn things, but still, as these aggregates, countries still rise and fall, empires still rise and fall. So there is this amnesia. There is just the bird is just building the nest. The nest is very complex now. It's an empire. lasts for what, on average, 250 years. Egypt, Rome, Greek, Turkey, Persia, Genghis Khan, China, Great Britain, America, probably China again after this. But there's still, why is that still happening? There is this amnesia, right? It's normally a bloated military, overextended, decadence, pleasure, no real hardship, thinking the world's a soft, cuddly place, and then the next one comes up and just kills you and takes over. Go for about 250 years, and then that will start to decay. We are still just passing on how to build the bird nest. And I'm wondering if maybe that is what AI will be, or if that is what the next empire will be the importance of learning how every other empire rose and fell. And how do you extend past that, which is difficult because of the lengths of empires. They seem alien. The one before us, they all had powdered wigs and had big ships. We can't identify. We have F-22 Raptors, but no, it's the same idea. Military power. Theirs was the Navy. The one before that was a bunch of guys in medieval armor. When that can be identified, the nature of what causes the empire to die and thus not fall, because a lot is lost when it falls and a new one rises. There's often periods of warring. What would manifest from that if, instead of simply teaching the baby how to build a nest and then that's it, how to grab a banana and eat it, if you just pass on knowledge, look what can be done in 10,000 years. What can be done again if like a country or an empire or whatever as a whole can learn from mistakes? Like, what acceleration does that open up? Does
Yeah,
that
and
make sense?
yeah, well, I think about this all the time. And I love this thought pattern, this thought line, because technology is either a tool or a master. And I think so much of the time we allow it to be our master. And Aldo Leopold, who wrote Sand County Almanac, he was kind of one of the fathers of the environmental movement. And the first line in that book is, there are two mistakes in not growing up on a farm. And that's believing that all food comes from a grocery store and all heat comes from a furnace. And so we're kind of disconnected from the basics of life sometimes. And this is part of the reason I bought a farm 15 years ago, so I could, raise my kids with this physical responsibility and these connections to the cycles of life, where you can realize, okay, people did this 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, and you can see that, as fantastic of a tool as all these computers and all this technology is, to your point, if some big EMP happens tomorrow, how many of us can go rebuild all these electrical systems? Most of us couldn't. And this is kind of going back to the earlier conversation, where just understanding so many aspects of life just for the sake of knowing, not because you have to apply it, but having that understanding of how things work. I could probably fix a refrigerator. There's a couple things I could tinker with, I could do, but there's a lot of things I can't. And with this acceleration of knowledge, compounding on each other generationally, and this logarithmic amount of new things that piggyback onto other things, you can't know it all. I get that. But at the same time, going back to that basic understanding of how basic things work, having an appreciation for that, and then realizing that this is a tool, I'm not going to let it be my master, I'm going to master it, is so important. And, like my microscope, it'll be obsolete someday, because we'll be able to just stick a needle in someone, test a cajillion genes and say, oh, you have this. I'm like, but if you don't know the basics of what you're looking for here, it doesn't matter what that knowledge base is there. And, empires rise, empires fall, absolutely. And just, reflecting upon, did they fall because they forgot the basics? Did they get so into the new technology that they used it incorrectly and became, like you said, became decadent and didn't fall back upon the appreciation of the basics upon which any empire society is built. Yes, certainly you've got to have the strong militaries to maintain empire. But if you start losing your principle behind that empire, it doesn't matter how much technology you do or don't have if you misapply it. And then somebody else beats you out. And then that 250-year cycle repeats itself. And now somebody else is top dog. And then, just so trying to recognize, I think it goes back to the point you brought up earlier, humility. So if we're humble enough as a nation, and I'm gonna sunshine's popping through the snow clouds. I'm gonna just lower that.
You're good.
So if we're humble enough, as a people to say, okay, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, and then, allowing ourselves to not get into arrogance and hubris, then your empire doesn't fall. But if you allow yourself to get into arrogance and hubris, societally you're screwed. So I'm just a few thoughts bouncing off
Yeah.
the idea you brought up.
But then I wonder, is it a is it a bad thing that the empires fall? I mean, it's bad for the people in it, but I mean, in terms of big picture, because science moves forward when the previous generation dies off. Maybe this is just this like death and decay rebirth process. Maybe you
It
need
could
that.
be. Yeah, it could be. And that's some fun things. I mean, in terms of just that greater connectedness and looking past, looking forward, appreciating now, kind of, that Zen Buddhism thought of things. I'm not gonna change the past. I can learn from it. I'm gonna live today the best I can, but is what I'm doing today going to impact the future? And that may be the lesson in humility. When someone goes awry as a society or a nation, then an empire does rise, hopefully for the better. What we've seen over the last couple of years has been a more of a draconian approach, taking away the individual freedom, the individual right. That's highly concerning to me, in terms of then you don't have that freedom of thought, that freedom of expression, that freedom of experimentation of mind. To the moment somebody else rules over you, your ability to grow and learn is gone.
Mm. So if we're kind of already, we've gone all over the place. Do you think UFOs are real? Or what do you think UFOs? I think they're real. What do you think they are?
Ah, gosh, former military guy. I know some of the technologies we had really long ago. Yeah,
Are wild.
I've sat in the cockpit of an SR-71 all mothballed and just looking at that and thinking, huh.
1964 first flight.
Yeah, no kidding. And so I'm like, this is, mid 1980s. I'm sitting in the cockpit of this thing down at the Skunk Works in Palm Desert going, wow, this is decades old already.
Yeah.
What did we know then versus what are
Yeah.
we actually doing at Area 51, and what technology do we have? I'm open to the concept, the construct. I don't think we're the only sentient beings in the universe. No, no way. I mean, there's billions upon billions of stars, and many of which are likely habitable. Interdimensional things can happen. I don't know is the honest answer. I'm always open to the thought. It's fun to watch. Do I think we have, black ops that are tinkering with technology that, all NASA technology, that, I mean, the fact that we have a cell phone, that we have a computer, that we have all these things is because our space programs and our advanced technology programs eventually make it to society, once it's quote safe for people to be using, et cetera. So, uh, do we have propulsion systems? Yeah, we do. Um, are certain things that we're seeing maybe not known to all the military because certain areas of clandestine military are working on things? Yeah. So do I think a lot of things are explainable? I do. Do I think there's a lot of things unexplainable? Yeah, you bet. There are certain things where you look at the laws of physics and go, wait, that's not possible. So I don't know. It's always fun to go down the path and think of it. Do I think they're little green men or grays? I don't know. Is it probable? Yeah, it's probable. It would be human hubris to think we're the only people in this entire galactic experience.
Yeah. And then more more ego to say, well, this isn't real because nothing can go faster than the speed of light. I'm like, not that we know of, and that's just as absurd as saying like humans will never fly.
Right.
Like, this is our model. But yeah, I'm kind of going back and forth on it. I'm more and more leaning towards it probably is some skunkworks DARPA super compartmentalized.
Hmm.
I'm kind of leaning towards that. I can't, again, intuition. That's just my gut's kind of pulling me, like the Tic Tac, the 2004 thing off the Nimitz, right? See all the
Yeah.
guys going on the podcast, and then people are like, "Though there's a misinformation." I mean, I think those are dudes who are just saying what they saw. I think that was probably ours, and what better way to see its lethality and its ability to evade than to red sell it against
Absolutely.
our own military. Because if we
I
believe our
thought,
military is better than China,
yeah,
put it through the gauntlet. Can it evade China? Cool. Can it evade the Navy? Which one? The US Navy? All right, let's see. Can it do it? All right. And if you can do that, well, then you can do anything.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's funny. I kind of went down that similar pathway when I saw that first video. I'm like, wait a minute. And I thought, I got to fly in the backseat of a fighter here and there. It was kind of fun. And it's like, okay, I can see what the systems can do and not do. But going back to, which Black Ops program is working on it behind the scenes, it's like, okay. And having been, an engineering major at the time and knowing what we knew, way back when, that's where I lean. I lean to that construct that we're developing technologies or have developed, and why not test them against ourselves?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. I
But
just,
always doubt, always question, always doubt. That's the key,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I guess what I'm leaning towards, I don't think it's alien. It's because the US, the power structure of the military, the idea of it being aliens is so emasculating to them because they're supposed to be the big power on Earth, and you don't want to admit that this thing came into our airspace with impunity, laughed at us, and left. So I get the psychological warfare aspect of, even if it was an alien, you come out and go, "Yeah, that's ours. It's classified," just to make it look like you know what you're doing. But the fact that they are kind of coming out more and releasing videos, and that seems like it is, that makes me think it's ours.
Yeah, and part of it's wagging the dog too. Oh, look at this,
Well, that
So
too, yeah.
yeah, all the other political stuff that's happening, and it's sometimes, oh, there's the shiny object, let's get distracted, and then they can get away with the other things that.
40% increase in all-cause mortality.
Right,
A
right, yeah.
balloon.
Hey, look at balloon. Never mind that we put a gene into too many people and we don't know what it's gonna do. Oops.
Yeah.
And I get concerned about those things too, where it is just it's a shiny object to hey, look the other way. It's a carnival trick.
Yeah. That's always my kind of gut throughout this podcast is when something happens, I'm like, what else is going? Something just happened on Wall Street. Did they just deregulate something? I'm like, what are we?
Right.
There's this funny, clip on of this old sketch group called Whitest Kids You Know, and it's from, like, I don't know, whatever, early 2000s, and it's the White House press secretary comes out and he's like, all right, I would like to address the question about the United States does have a base on the moon. Everyone's, well, Mr. Secretary, and it's like one at a time. And he's like, unfortunately, the moon base is being attacked by bears right now, moon bears. And Mr. Secretary, blah, blah, blah. And yes, the moon does have bears. We are grateful that they are not the Saturn bears, because there are bears on the other 13 planets. And someone goes, nine. And he goes, yeah, nine. You're whatever, right? And it's just kind of evading that there's more and more going on. And they're like, well, how many planets are there? And it's like, well, from what we've heard from the Intergalactic Federation is, and it's just like the picture's getting bigger and bigger. And finally, someone goes, shot in the dark. Are we invading Iran today? And the press secretary goes, you got me. And like, it's just like, I kind of think of that when something happens. I'm like, what? What's going on? What is
Yeah,
going on?
Occam's razor, sometimes the most simple explanation is the actual explanation.
Yeah.
And so I think, unfortunately, you bring up one that, unfortunately is near and dear to my heart. Over here, this stack is people that are no longer with us,
Jeez.
most of which, have come to me to look at as, post mRNA injection deaths and whatnot. And so I've been studying those. But some of the obvious things that are happening, the excess deaths and things like that, up my realm of, pathology and study, that most people aren't willing to look at because it goes against the narrative and you might lose your job, et cetera. I'm like, I'm not worried about that. And that's why I'm independent. So I can think independently and help people and give a yes or a no answer or an I don't know answer. But at the same time, there's so many things societally that are so critically important that, oh, look at the balloon, like you said, or, oh, a new UFO today, or, oh, never mind that big nuclear cloud of train cars that we just set on fire in some town in Ohio, and God bless those people. It's very frustrating what I don't call it mainstream media, I call it legacy media, because they're present is now the past. I mean, they're shrinking, this independent media like yours, so many critical thinkers, longer formats, people engaging in actual thought, people questioning is kind of where the future of information is. And so I like the point you bring up, because there are things that are front and center, that should be front and center, that are life and death, and they keep distracting us. And unfortunately, we, have this 30-second TikTok time span, or attention span, I mean, and our kids are being entertained to death, and Chinese children are sitting there learning math and science on TikTok, and they're feeding us, you know,
Drivel.
yeah, dribble and insanities and nanities, and so that's kind of where I hope we can somehow stimulate a portion of the younger generation to be critical thinkers, because that's where society maintains or sustains itself.
There's something a little symbolic about it being called a social media feed. And it just kind
Mm,
of feels like, come on, little piggy, go put your head in the trough. Don't
that's
look, don't
great.
look up.
Wow.
Oh, look, Kim Kardashian's doing this. Oh, look at this guy. He did a backflip on her. Oh, look at that girl. She's scandally just. And it's like China's economy is going to pass us in 2028. Shut up, Biggie. Get back to the feed.
That's brilliant. I'd never really thought of it that way. And I don't do a whole lot of the socials. I'll go on some of the Twitter spaces now that we can actually have some free speech
Yeah.
again.
I,
But
sorry, go on.
no, 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 no. I love that analogy. It's a feed. Huh.
Yeah. I,
All right. I'm going to remember that. I
yeah.
learned very important today. Thanks, Tommy. That's a good one. That's
I tell people that, every day when I finish the podcast, as soon as I finish the last one, I immediately download Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, because those are the ones I post the podcast to. And then I have all the other ones that I keep on my phone because I'm not tempted to use them because they're not fun. Parlor, Getter, Gab, Telegram, Truth Social, all things I also put the podcast on. Those I leave on the phone because I don't use them otherwise. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, those are things that I find myself, yeah, I'm just going to look at it for a second. Next thing you know, you're like, what am I? It's 11 o'clock. Like, I'm in the feed. And I find that aside from wasting time, the longer I'm in there, without there ever being an exact moment of feeling the switch, just in general, I'm a little sadder. I feel a little more inadequate, a little more anxious, a little more depressed, more nostalgic, more fearful of the future, and less grateful for the things around me. And
hmm
also uh a lot less fire
right.
to work.
Yeah. Takes
And
away the spark. Uh-huh.
those like handful of things. And again, it's all in moderation. You also don't delete it. So like I upload them all, I download them, I upload the podcast them because I got to get the reach out there. And as they're uploading, or as like the videos like uploading on like BitChute or something, I'll allow like a couple minutes of like the piggy feed. I'll be like, that is a brightly colored thumbnail with explosions and music. And all right, yeah, this guy's wearing a GoPro and he's skinny dipping off, French Polynesia with beautiful models. And then just enough. It's like a fun little, and then I'm like, and kill it. Finish uploading it, delete, 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 delete. All right. Just keep it off. And
It goes back to that point. Is it a tool or is it a master?
yeah. So I'm just slip in there for a little bit, enjoy it. Because if you never use it, you're gonna have no tolerance to it. And then you're gonna see it one day and it's gonna suck you in whole. So instead you
Well,
gotta look at
I
it.
think you have to have that balance and understanding. I'm a big
Also
believer
fun. Yeah.
in Goldilocks. This
Yeah.
one's too hot, this is too cold, this is just right. So it's that moderation approach. I do that in medicine. Some people, "Oh, how much do I take? If a little is good, a lot is better." I'm like, no, moderation. And then all the other ways of balancing life beyond, that. But same thing, with kids, we would say, okay, here's your time today. If you're going to do your social thing, I don't want you to be societally ignorant. So you have to have some exposure to understand that world, but you don't need to dwell or live in that world per se either.
Yeah. I mean, it is, and it's also okay to like just have fun. It's okay
Oh,
to
you
just
bet.
like,
You bet. Social literacy, I mean,
yeah.
is important as well. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, off day, hungover. I'm not going to the gym, not doing podcasts today. You bet your ass I'm gonna scroll through brain dead Instagram posts for 3 hours. Yeah, I am, and it's
And
fun.
I'll
And
do that with my 15-year-old. She'll say, "Hey, Dad, let's watch Fail Army." I'm like, "Okay, let's get sucked into Fail Army for an
yeah,
hour or two. Why not?
let's
Put it
just
on the big screen, sling it up to the screen, and
let's
just
just
laugh."
go down the YouTube rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Total brain dead, colorful, whatever. It's a fun little ride, and then you go, that's enough. All right. Sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and I'll turn on some music as I'm getting ready, and I'll be like, audiobook. Get it out. You just gotta do an hour. Get the audiobook. And once I've done my hour, then I'll turn on some music. And I'm like, enjoy a little bit of music. And it's just little bit here, a little bit there. But
Well, that's important. I mean, it's so important though, because yeah, again, all work, no play. So that's part of play too, just allowing the neurons to just, okay, I'm going to go this direction today and I'm going to entertain myself. And then the ones are tugging you back this way. Like, okay, all right, come back, come back. Okay, now, we're
yeah.
back in resonance, and we had some fun, got some work to do, and finding that balance is so important. So much of life is out of balance, and so many people don't know where to find balance anymore. So, I think play allows you to go back to work. Both. I think it's yin yang.
And then there also is something I kind of like about being not entirely, but somewhat, if not mostly, socially illiterate because I don't spend time on that. So I don't know what like the hottest new meme is or the trend or something. And I do kind of like that because like when I play like a video game or something, I won't read anything about it. I'll know the general premise of it. You're going here and you got to take over. Okay, whatever. I'll turn off the tutorials. I won't look at any of the tips. I skip through all the cutscenes. And so it's just me standing there with a character, and I'll be like, "All right, just basic ground rules." I'll be like, "All right, this is gun, this is aim. I can steal a car. All right, I can. This is how far I can fall before I take damage. I do this. This is like the police response. This is what I'm doing, and then I'll just go do something, and I'll do it, and I'll play the game, and then I'll master the game, and then I'll play with someone else who plays the game and is part of the larger community, and I'll learn things from them. But then I will have all these weird tactics and things, and they'll be like, "How the hell did you figure that out?" I'm like, "Because I went in there with no. This is how the game's played." I'll be like, "I did this first."
Mhm.
There's one game, Just Cause, where you're going into like Panama and you're overthrowing this entire country. I would go in and just go through and do all the little side missions for like 3 weeks, get all the XP, and I would unlock the fighter jet that you could spawn anywhere at any time with unlimited bombs. And for 3 weeks, my progress on the game went from 0 to like 1% on the main story. And then I would get in the fighter jet and I would bomb every base from high altitude and beat the game in 2 hours. So I would all of a sudden just get 100% completion. And it was so much easier. You never got to go through anything. You don't got to level up. You don't got to nothing. Just get the plane with the huge JDAMs on it and then just nuke them from orbit. And it's like a strategy no one uses. And I would do that with games all the time. And I actually applied that when starting this podcast. I was like, I'm not going to take any podcast course, gonna do nothing. I'm gonna, I don't care. I'm gonna randomly bring up X, Y, and Z
Yeah.
and have my own strategy.
Well, and start with tabula rasa. That tabula rasa that most people, come at something with their preconceived ideas or notions, and to go into it naive and blind by choice. That way you don't have the bias from somebody else and you don't have their bias. And it's like, okay. And because you have a foundation of breadth of experience and patterns on how to learn things, you don't have to follow somebody else's pattern. And I apply that in science on a daily basis. It's so important in so many areas of life. You can read a book on how to beekeep, or you can just go beekeep. So, and the first 20 stings hurt, that's fine.
Yeah.
But beyond that, you're like, okay, I learned. Okay, now I'll go read a book. But
Yeah.
going into it, I kind of like that approach too, because now you don't have somebody else's, you're not shoulded to death. Well, you should do it this way, or you should do it that way. You're like, huh, I've learned this, I learned this. Okay, now I need a mentor.
And then what's really cool is once you've played the game and mastered your own little weird way, go back and do the tutorial and learn the normal method. And you'll fill in some gaps you didn't know, but you will have this entire thing in your arsenal of these weird little back tricks and tactics. And then you become like the Jedi of the game.
There you
You
go.
know everything. And it's just like, how the hell did you? And it's just, you have the mainstream approach and you have the back approach and just all these crazy. It's like you have your like normal bomber, and then you also have like your Delta Force Black Ops and the UFO, like do all this wild shit on the side. And
Well, that's part of the fun of life is doing. As Yoda says, there is no try, only do.
yeah,
And so doing is how we learn. And most people are afraid to just take that first step into doing something. Whether it be podcasting, whether it be taking up painting or some sport or whatever. Just get out there and do it. You're going to be terrible at it at first, but gosh, by doing is how you learn. And again, I've done that with kids, with residents, med students that have rotated through. I'm like, okay, the hardest thing you're going to do is do this without knowing anything at first. So do it.
yeah,
And then after they've done what they can, then they come to you and you fill in the blanks.
yeah. And then we gotta wrap it up in a second because I have another one I have to do.
Yeah, sure.
But
Hopefully a fun one.
yeah. No, yeah, though the next one's gonna be fun. This one's fun.
Cool.
Is they did some study, I think, in Japan. I could be completely butchering this, but they like looked at the US transportation system, like the Eisenhower highways, the trains, the subways from a city, state, national level. And then they took like agar, like microbiology, and I think they
This is
made it.
the fungal mycelia.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
made it in the shape of, I think, the United States, and then they put nutrients in equal proportions to different. New York had more, LA, Atlanta was a little smaller than that, DC was smaller than that. And then they put on some fungi, and they saw it draw its own connections, completely alien. Some of them were like a given, like of course there's like a New York Boston corridor, but some of the ways they did it was so alien, but it was the most energy efficient
yeah,
because they had no notions. It was just sugar, food. And I think they then used it. They made like a model of whatever city in Japan, put the agar down, the nutrients, laid the fungi made the path. Then they went out and built their own subway system. And
yeah.
like all the data shows is the most efficient system in the world.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing it was like a Paul Stamets lecture where he
Yeah,
tells
yeah,
this story.
yeah,
And just the amazing, it is fascinating how genetically similar we are to fungal mycelia, and the amount of DNA that's shared. And I mean, our neural networks, et cetera, really mimic those. So it's really fascinating to look into that. I mean, that's a whole nother couple hours of
yeah.
discussion. That's an area that I really cool.
Well, that's kind of my logic with this podcast. Is no, you should go from this guest to this guest. It's just where am I being? What's the equivalent of my like sugar, like gradient that I'm being pulled towards by proteins and weird tubules. We're gonna talk about this today. I'm feeling this. We're gonna talk about this and just I don't know what's going on. The fungi has no idea. But as I look back at the podcast and see its path of growth, I'm like, yeah, this thing's it's working. It's
Yeah,
working and growing in this weird thing.
that allowing, and with the allowing, you connect and you grow.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Dude, this was fun as hell. We absolutely need to do another one.
Yeah.
Do you have a podcast?
I have a website, rcolemd.com. My wife is forcing me. She's like, you got to do a podcast. People love talking to you.
No,
So,
yeah, no, start your yeah, no, you and I have the same mind. Why would you not start one? You're
yeah,
saying
it's,
you're just do it.
I just need to do it. You're right.
Just do it.
You're
Dude,
right.
I will give you access to my entire library of guests. I can't promise you they'll say you might say I want that guy and I'll ask them and they'll be like no. So I can't promise anything, but
So what's
I,
strange is tens of millions of people around the world know me now because of how I've spoken
yeah.
out. And so I need to do it. I'm finally home from traveling and lecturing and whatnot, and I'm home for about a month. And it's like, oh, I have time. I just need to do it. And I'll start like you, 8, 9 listeners and subscribers. And next thing you know,
Yeah.
I will. I'm going to do it. Absolutely going to. I just need to now take the discipline and do it.
It's literally just do an episode a day. Just do not even do an episode a week, whatever. Start small.
Yeah,
Start with
that's how I
very
need to start. Yeah.
yeah, very small. Now that's how I started. Was one a week and then like two a week, and now I'm a psychopath who does like 15 a week because
You're
I
a
don't know
beast
how to
now, man.
stop.
That's awesome.
I don't know how to stop. But do it, and then yeah, you go through my library, take
Cool.
the take the knowledge of I've made the wheel. You just come to me now, and you don't have to learn how to make the wheel. I'll just give you the email addresses of these
I'm going to
people.
take you up on
You,
that, Tommy.
yeah,
You're the
yeah.
best, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You're a cool dude, Dr. Cole. Thank you for coming on here. Can you text me your website? Because I
Yeah, yeah. I'll
went in
text
one
that.
ear out the other, so I can put it in the description. Guys, go check him out. And if you don't start a podcast, I'm gonna start harassing you and guilt tripping you.
It's a
And
deal, Tommy.
all right. Thank you so much, sir. This was awesome. Till
Stay well,
next
my
time.
friend. Keep thriving.
God bless.